Chapter 9. It stretched from floor to ceiling, like a shiny black curtain billowing slightly in the gentle breeze that blew along the passageway. It bulged and heaved and reached out a dozen oily tentacles that came snaking and twinkling toward Astra. Some of them wrapped around Pilbeam like the tentacles of some evil plant. "Astra, run!" shouted Pilbeam. Astra started to back away, but when she looked behind her, she saw more trouble there. A cake was blocking the corridor, a really big cake. It looked like a little mutant cinnamon roll, but with teeth. It also thought Astra cinnamon rolls didn't have all those legs and claws, and they didn't growl like that. The cake sprang at her. At the same moment, one of the horror's tentacles wrapped around her from behind. The killer cake hissed in fury as Astra was jerked away from it. The nameless horror moved fast, growing legs when it needed them to gallop along the walls and ceiling of the passageways, sometimes turning almost entirely liquid and just pouring. Gripped tightly in its tentacles, Astra and Pilbeam went rushing through the ship nearly as fast as Astra had when the Poglites vacuumed her up. When the rushing stopped, they were back in the garden where Astra had eaten the peach. Now, she knew how the peach might have felt when she plucked it from its nice, comfortable branch and bared her teeth to bite into it. The nameless horror let go of her, and she drifted beside Pilbeam above the overgrown lawn, waiting nervously for it to eat her. Instead, the horror began to change. It drew in its inky tentacles and seemed to shrink, gathering itself into a glistening blob of black ooze as tall as a man. A head bulged like a butt on top of it. Features appeared there as if an invisible sculptor was molding a face out of wet black clay. The blob stretched out one arm, then another. The arms grew hands and the hands grew fingers, which wiggled experimentally. Its lower half divided into legs with broad, flat, five-toed feet that stuck out somehow to the lawn despite of the gravity. It was 10 feet tall, a giant of shining darkness. With careful steps, it walked toward Astra. "I do not want to eat you," it said. "You speak English? I studied the Poglites translator logs and learned your language." "Oh. Perhaps I will not frighten you so much now that I look more like a human." Astra watched the black giant come toward her. He did not look much like a human, and he was still a little frightening, but he seemed quite polite, so she said, "I'm Astra. What's your name?" "I'm the Nameless Horror." "But that's not a name," said Astra. "That's just what those Poglites call you. What's your real name? What does your family call you?" "I'm the Nameless Horror," the Nameless Horror said. "That is the only thing I've ever been called. I do not have any family except the Poglites." Astra frowned, remembering what Poglite 2 had said about the Nameless Horror. "They found you drifting in space," she said. "Were you on another ship they robbed?" "I was not on a ship," said the Nameless Horror. "I was just drifting, and then along came the Poglite ship, and they took me in. And when they found out I could alter my shape and live in the emptiness of space and slither easily inside other ships, they thought I could be useful to them and let me stay." Perhaps he was the emptiness of space, thought Astra. Perhaps a bit of all that emptiness got tired of being nothing and turned itself somehow into him. And then it didn't know what to do and just floated there, waiting until the Poglites arrived and told it what to be. "Thank you for letting me out," she said. The Nameless Horror said, "It was wrong what they are doing to your ship. They told me they only took things that no one needed anymore. It is my fault. I thought your people were all dead. I thought this was a great tomb in which some alien race had sent the bodies of their beloved dead to fly among the stars forever. By the time the Poglites learned of my mistake, their greed had got the better of them." "It is not your fault," said Astra. "It's mine. That's what caused it all. Those cakes. That's what made the ship go off course. And now the Poglites have been eaten. Even the nice ones, and it's my fault. All of it." She clenched her fist tight to stop herself crying again. "They have not been eaten," said the Nameless Horror. "I can feel them faintly. I can hear their voices vibrating through the walls of the ship. They are prisoners." "But why would cakes want prisoners?" asked Pilbeam. "These are no ordinary cakes," said Astra. "Who knows what they want? Poor Poglites. I suppose we shall have to rescue them." "No," said Pilbeam. "It's more important that we get to the control room and try to regain control of the ship." The nameless horror had been watching them. He was picking up some of their gestures and expressions to go with his new body. He nodded and then let his head revolve around like pillbeams. If we go together, he said, we can do both. Chapter 10. Hey, Chapter 10.